Welcome back, everyone. We are at episode 1:8.
Woohoo!
1:8.
I think last time you said ...
I think I said ... Actually, I said I wasn't going to say it, but we're back with another episode of Interventions and Detentions. I'm Brad.
And I'm Kylie.
And we have a special guest with us this week. We would like to introduce to you Miss Cindy Scheiber. She is our special education teacher here at Central Noble Primary, and this week's episode is all about special education and what it looks like not only in an elementary building, but in a primary building as well. So, Cindy, if you'd like to maybe just give us a little quick background about who you are and what got you here to Central Noble Primary, that'd be great.
Sure. So I've been teaching for about 26 years. Half of those have been here at what used to be Wolf Lake Elementary, now Central Noble Primary. My first 13 years, I taught mainly first grade, and then I did some intervention with readers for the last 4 or 5 years. And then I moved here, and I started out in title and then took a special ed position. It was my first. I was working with students with emotional disabilities, and then I transferred into working with resource kids. So I love my position. If I could pick any position in the building, this is the one I would pick.
Well, you're very good at it, and we're going to hear all about that here in a little bit. And I think you and I crossed paths at Wolcott Mills at one point.
Did.
We didn't really know each other.
Really?
No.
But yeah, we shared some common ground. Were you subbing at that time? Is that what it was? Or?
I had just taken the position as the ED teacher here, and your ED teacher was very experienced.
Yep.
So I went over there for a while.
Shout out to Ken Davis from the old days at Wolcott Mills.
Ken Davis shout out, okay.
He was really good at what he did,
Awesome.
So he'd be a great one to learn from. So maybe another potential guest someday. But let's just jump into it, Cindy, and maybe if you want to talk about what I would call special education 101. What does it look like here at our primary building or elementary schools in general? Kind of give us a general, what does your day look like?
Yeah, so we're a K-1-2 building, and it can look different at any elementary building you go to. But here in our building, we have a whole range of services we can provide for kids depending on what they need. I have students that are with me an hour and a half a day when we work on a lot of reading and math and social skills. I have other students all the way down to students that don't come with me at all during the day. I really have very little interaction with them, but I consult with their teachers and I progress monitor their goals. So, it can look like anything. Whatever the student needs is what we do.
And kind of going off of that, it's very similar to our MTSS process. I feel like in the way that it can be different all the time. It's different for kid to kid. We're just trying to do what's best to meet those students' needs, which I think is pretty cool, pretty interesting too.
And maybe just as a side note for our listeners, what are the areas of disability of the students that you see the most here in our building?
So probably the most is developmental delay. That's the one that we are big on down here at this grade level.
Which makes sense because we're so young.
We're young, and that can go up to age 9. So at age 9, we would need to retest to see if they fall into another disability area. So we get a lot of kids that come into kindergarten already with that developmental delay IEP. And then I'd say after that, we probably have a lot that have some ADHD that need the support working with their executive functioning skills, and a few kids that are re-identified maybe with learning disabilities. So.
And you've mentioned the acronym IEP a lot, and we'll use that a lot through this, and we should probably back up a little bit for some of our listeners. They might not know what an IEP is or stands for, so maybe take us through what an IEP is, how it's used, what your role is with the IEP, and maybe even what the classroom teacher's role is with an IEP.
Yeah, so IEP stands for an individualized education plan. And what it is once we have students that are identified with disabilities, we create this document that says what we're going to provide for the student. And it includes specialized education, like something specialized that we're doing to help them with that disability area. The whole document lays out goals. So where their weaknesses are, we may have goals in reading, math, writing, executive functioning for those students with with attention difficulties. We have some kids that might have emotional disabilities, and we provide supports for them in that. So there's all kinds of goals that we can have, and it's a whole wide range.
Even things like handwriting goals,
yes,
and fine motor goals, and those kind of things, right? Can also be in an IEP.
They can. So, and my area that I have, the students that I work with IEPs usually have the academic goals or the behavioral goals. And then Ashley Williamson, our SLP, our speech language person, she works on those language goals and speech goals. We have a different person who comes to our building and works on occupational therapy. If they need physical therapy, we have another person that comes and provides physical therapy. I think those are all our providers at this building.
So just for the viewers, is all this information, all these different providers, is it all on one document? Is there a bunch of different documents for each kid? How does that kind of work?
It is all in one document. So if I have a student that needs the resource help for reading, and then they also need some help with their speech, and then they might also need help with handwriting for OT. All of that is written into one document, and then there's one teacher of record that pretty much takes care of all the paperwork for that, which always falls on me unless it is just speech and language. So,
as I say, Cindy has a lot of hats that she wears because, I mean, if you just listen to that process of the IEP and all the hands that are involved in it, she has to wear a lot of hats. Not only, does she deliver instruction to these students, but she's writing IEPs and writing goals. She's observing when students get referred for testing, and then also doing some evaluations and writing that up. So
collaborating with the other individuals that are involved.
Right. So I would say Cindy probably as difficult as a classrooms teacher is here sometimes at the primary building. I would say a special ed teacher is even more difficult just because of all those roles that you have and trying to find the time to get those things done. And I know Cindy puts a lot of time in outside of school because there's not enough time in school to get these things done. And we truly appreciate all the work that she does with that. But thinking of an IEP and how bulky it can be, when all that is said and done and the IEP is created for a student, how does that information get disseminated to the teacher then? Because the teacher obviously has to be aware of goals and accommodations and things. How do we get that information to teachers so that they're aware of it in the classroom?
So all of our teachers come to those IEP meetings that we have with parents. So they're there to hear everything that's in that IEP. And then I can create a short document, like most IEP documents are 10 to 14, 16 pages, but I can create one that's only a page or two long, and it includes for the classroom teacher and anybody who's working with that student goals, their accommodations, and their amount of service time that they have. So it includes all that, what we're doing for the kids, and then I make sure that all the teachers and anyone who works with those students has that, because classroom teachers are the ones that are doing those accommodations. Yeah. I pull and do resource lessons if they need that, and I provide those accommodations for testing when we do small groups, but otherwise day to day it's the classroom teachers.
Awesome. And Cindy does not have to do all this on her own. You have 2 instructional assistants, sort of 3 in our building, depending on her caseload at any given time. But maybe talk a little bit about that process too. Like, how do you use those individuals to help support the student goals and needs? So
I couldn't do this job if I didn't have my IAs. Big shout out here to Casey Helmer and Courtney Arnold for helping me. They're like me in other rooms. So I get together with them. They're based out of my room, so we are talking every day about the students. I tell them what it is I want that student to work on. They have the IEPs. They know everything that's going on. They go out in the classrooms, and they do the push-in time in the classrooms where we support the kids in the room, make sure they have what they need, make sure that their goals are being checked in on during the day, just that extra help there. And then they come back and they let me know what's going on, what they're having difficulties with, and I give ideas to support in the classrooms. They also help me with progress monitoring. So we talked about that in the IEP. They have the goals, and I try to progress monitor their goals about once a week. It doesn't always end up like closings.
Right.
So
yes, like this week has been
we've
crazy.
Had 2 days of in school this week and 3 days
Monday
in the
and
middle.
Friday.
Out.
Right. Yeah. So progress monitoring really couldn't happen unless they're here. But they help me with that. They help me when we run IEP meetings. I can't be with my students. Classroom teachers need to be at the meetings, so they help cover groups. They cover classrooms. They're just wonderful, and they have a heart for kids, and it's just great to have their help.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we do have really good help, and it's appreciated on all levels.
Yes.
Maybe talk a minute about myth versus reality, because I know a lot of our listeners, again, maybe aren't really well versed in special education and its process. I think a lot of times people have their own ideas of what special education looks like in a school. Maybe talk about some of those, myths versus reality, how it really is versus what a lot of people might think it should be.
Well, I think one thing when I tell people what I do, and they'll say, "Oh, bless you for working with those kids," and I'm like, "These are just kids. They're not any different than any other kid. You can walk in our building, and you would probably never be able to pick out maybe more than one, and that would be because you're lucky. Kids with IEPs." I don't have kids with me all day. Like I said before, it's a big continuum of how long they're with me, what supports they need. So I think a lot of people think that it's you go into that special classroom.
Right.
And
you're in there all day.
You
and
never see anybody
You're
else.
isolated from the other
That's
kids.
really like the opposite of what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Really,
Right.
we want them in the classroom as much as possible.
Right.
And, you might hear Cindy use the terms push in, pull out. Maybe talk about that real quick, too, because services look different for different kids. Sometimes, people are pushing into classrooms. She's pulling out. What does that look like?
So when I say push in, that means that the resource staff goes into the classroom and helps the students in there, helping them access the regular grade level curriculum. We provide help for those kids that might have attention problems to make sure that they have what they need, that they're staying focused, just whatever work needs to be done in the classroom. They're there to provide that extra support. And it also helps the classroom teacher, because I'm thinking of one class right now where the student goes up to the teacher a lot, and then that teacher has a hard time making sure they see all the other kids in the classroom because they have to keep going back to this kid and helping. The kid just wants attention is really what it is. And so when we push in, we can take that over, and it frees up the classroom teacher a little to help everyone else too. And I tell my IAs, when you go in the classroom, you don't want to help just our students with IEPs. You don't sit down next to them. You don't make it look like they're the only one you're helping. You rotate through the classroom, and anybody who needs help, you can help support, but your eyes are always on our kids with the IEPs to make sure that they're getting what they need.
I think that's a really interesting point, that it's not just specifically for those kids, but we really do want to help all kids. So
Absolutely.
it's not...
Yeah,
I think that's cool.
And then pull out is when they come with me, and that's when we work on whatever skill that they're having trouble with in the classroom. And this is when I work on their goals. For a lot of our kids, we're talking K1, 2, so they're really struggling with learning how to read. So I do reading groups. That's a big part of my day. And it hits their goals, and then we practice that in a small group where they're not so distracted. I'm working down at their level to kind of fill in those gaps to catch them up so they're able to work in the general ed classroom.
Awesome. So last week's episode, we talked MTSS. It was all about Kylie. This week, it's all about Cindy. But to me, that MTSS is kind of the springboard, not always into special education, but maybe the springboard of the process. MTSS, we talked a lot about trying to keep kids out of special ed. That's, to me, that's providing interventions and strategies to hopefully meet the student where they're at so that, we don't have to go on to testing. But sometimes we have those kids that the interventions just aren't working and the growth isn't being made. And that MTSS process does, like I said, springboard us into special education, and collaboration is a big part of that. At the MTSS level, we talked last week how we have Kylie, we have you, we have our teachers, we have counselor there, and that's that beginning process. But once those kids have that label and have been evaluated and have the IEP, how important is collaboration at that point with the gen ed teachers, the interventionists, the parapros, yourself? What does that collaborative piece look like once a kid has the IEP?
I think it's still super important. There are people, you can always learn from others, and sometimes talking it out with another person gives you a different viewpoint, a different idea, something else to try. So I think it's still really important.
And I think from my standpoint, once, if a student moves through the MTSS process and then gets an IEP, we don't just stop communicating.
Right.
I'm checking in on them. I'm seeing what I can do, if I can help with service times or anything like that. Cindy's, seeing what we did in our interventions, those kind of things. We try to make it as smooth of a process as we can. Just another step in the MTSS process, and just kind of keep going with what we're doing. So I think on our end, we try to collaborate a lot, and we need to for the best for the kids, I think.
And I know you do a really good job of checking in with grade levels or classroom teachers throughout the week of, what's coming up ahead, what can I help with, what are you going to need my support with for these students that have IEPs in your classroom. So again, I do think that collaborative piece is so important, and I think we do a really good job of it. I think being a small school helps. We're literally a minute away from any classroom, 240 students. It's a nice small building, so it doesn't create a lot of challenges when it comes to collaboration, but it is, I guess, supportive of that. So let's move into something maybe kind of fun, but maybe kind of hard as well, talking about challenges and success stories that you've seen through your career in special education. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen in elementary special education, maybe in the past or today, because it has evolved a lot probably over your years in special ed?
So some of the biggest challenges sometimes are the number of students with the wide range of disabilities that I work with, because I have to know kindergarten curriculum, first grade curriculum, second grade curriculum, and then I have to know how to work with the kids that have the behavior difficulties and how to work with kids that are just struggling in other areas. I think that's...
Let me interject real quick. What is your caseload today? How many kids do you have?
20.
20, which is about an average size classroom for us here too.
Right.
So you're not far off, but they've been as high as
30.
So I kind of wanted to throw that in there because I think it's really important when she's working with all 3 grade levels and different ability levels, which classroom teachers have different abilities levels well, but 30 is a lot.
It is, and I have to know them each individually. So sometimes...
Just going to say that.
Yeah.
The IEP is the key there. It's individual for each student, and there's legal service times that go with that also.
Right.
So
the paperwork is
huge.
And
the paperwork, yes.
But that's a big challenge, I think, for special ed, is knowing each of them, knowing what they need, knowing what kind of behavior plan they're on, how to fill in all those gaps in there.
Awesome. How about some success stories and anything that stands out to you over the years of some really big wins for you?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this kindergartner I had. I am lucky in the way that I get kids sometimes for 3 years. And I get to see them grow over those 3 years. And I had a kindergartner that came in at the beginning of kindergarten who was just all over the place. I took him one-on-one because when I did my pull-out lessons, he had to be by himself in the room because he went everywhere in the room. And I just kind of followed him around, and we talked, I pulled out letters, and when he bounced over to the letters, we talked about letters, and wherever he was, I just kind of went and followed him, and we learned. In the classroom, he just had a really hard time focusing. We had our sensory specialist come in, which we also have a sensory specialist who works with OT. And it was just really, really hard. And he didn't know very much either. But we... by the end of second grade, he was reading on grade level. He was able to focus. He was just like a success story.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
The progress he made was remarkable.
And I think that's the neat thing, whether it's MTSS or special ed, seeing the growth and progress that our kids make, that's a win no matter what.
Absolutely.
So I love that.
Yeah, like I said, that's the fun thing of being K through 3 is I get to watch them go all the way through that.
It's and I think that's when we see their most of their growth too, when they're young like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's jump into some fun things real quick. We'll kind of hit you with some.
Yeah, this one's a good.
some
one,
fun
Cindy.
things.
This one's a good one.
Because we're kind of winding down. We're getting close to that 20-minute mark, but we've got some time here. I feel like anybody that does things like Cindy does, special education teachers, they've got to have superpowers.
Yes.
So
Yes,
what's
definitely.
one superpower, Cindy, that you wish you had for your classroom?
Ooh.
A superpower I wish I had. I wish I could see in their little brains. And I want to know why they think what they think sometimes. Because...
That would be a great superpower.
Yeah, actually, that would be great.
Every
for
educator
everyone. I
needs
would
that
love
superpower.
Why? Why are you
Why
doing
are
that?
you doing
Why
that?
did you do that? Why
Right.
did you say that?
Yeah.
I catch myself as an administrator when kids get in trouble, like, why did you do that? And I'm thinking, these kids, their brains
They
can't
do have
process
no
it
idea.
yet. I don't know
they
why
have no idea why they do
I
that.
ask that why question, but it does make me feel better.
I know.
Yeah, right? It
I don't get a
does.
good answer, but it
No,
makes
the
me
kid,
feel better.
and then you get a little upset if they don't say.
Why don't you know
I don't
why?
know. Yeah, well.
Any other superpowers that you can think of that would be helpful in your line of work?
If I could, when I have the kids in my room doing small groups, if I could take away everything that distracts them and helps keep them focused.
Push a button and everything disappears. Yeah, that'd
So
be nice.
they can keep their attention on it. We can remove all the worries they have from home,
Nice.
all the
Yeah.
worries about I can't do this, and they are just there
That
to
self-confidence
work
issues.
and be successful.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I thought maybe you'd say being invisible because you
Ooh,
kind of would like to
Yes.
just disappear sometimes yourself.
just an invisibility.
Okay, well, no, that's just a real life.
Okay, that works.
I would love to be
Okay,
invisible.
all right.
That
okay,
works
okay,
too.
okay.
Kylie, I know like we are not special ed teachers. I've actually subbed, before I became a teacher, I spent a lot of time substituting. Do you have any memories of interactions as in a special ed classroom through your teaching years? I'm going to share one in a minute for myself, but
Yeah, for a while I actually thought about going into special education. When I was at aide, way back when, I got to work with our special ed teacher and some of the kiddos, and I just loved them. I think it's so interesting how their brains work and just trying to figure out what you can do to help them. But when I taught fourth grade in the classroom, I got to co-teach with our special ed teacher. So we planned together. We mapped out how we were going to, set up our room and classroom. And it was such a cool experience. I really enjoyed it and just kind of got a little more behind the scenes and kind of more information on what kind of goes into it. But
there's a lot of schools
cool.
that do that co-teaching thing with special ed, and I think it sounds great. I don't know how well that would work in our building.
Yeah,
but
mine was a fourth grade, so it was a little bit easier, I feel like. We kind of had a better idea of where the kids were and what they needed to work on, but it worked well
I
for
think
us.
if you had your special ed kids clustered together in one room,
and that's how we ended up clustering them so that we could do that
definitely be some
easier.
things
Yeah.
that you'd have to finagle, I think, to make that work.
Right,
but-
and it becomes difficult at our grade level when you identify them in first grade and they're
Yeah.
already
Right.
in classrooms.
Yeah.
We
Right.
identify so many
Yes.
students here.
Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly.
My memory was, like I said, when I was substituting, I'd had some either 2 or 3 days a week where I could sub when I wasn't taking college classes, and I would get called to sub at my old middle school where I went as a student because at that time it was called functional skills. Now we call it applied skills. That teacher knew I was on the sub list, and she would request me. And I can remember the first time I was very apprehensive. I was like, I'm not trained for this. I don't know how to do this. But the first day in that classroom, I walked away like happy, and I loved it. It was fun. I had a lot of support. The kids were great. It wasn't anything bad, or I would get that call again, and I'd be like, yes, I get to go do applied skills today. And I can remember one day there was a little Amish girl that she was a runner, and they're like, watch, don't let her go anywhere by herself. Don't let her get to the door. We got to keep an eye on her. She'll be fine, but don't let her go. And she got to the parking
And
lot.
she went, huh? Okay.
She gave Mr. T a true run for my money. But it was fun, and I look back on those experiences. It made me a better teacher, I think, a better educator, and I wish everybody had those kinds of experiences because not every gen ed teacher gets to have that time. So
Yep,
that was
agree
that
with
was my favorite special memory about special ed. Any final thoughts, Cindy, that you have that we haven't covered that you want to hit on before we kind of wrap up this special ed episode this week?
Nothing I can think of right now.
I feel like it's so hard to hit
There's
Everything.
so much.
There's
Everything
so
in
much.
20
I was
minutes.
going to
Yeah.
say, we could probably do 4 more
Right.
podcast episodes about it. I can't believe, Brad, that you didn't have a good joke for Cindy today.
What?
I didn't.
He had
Yeah.
3 MTSS jokes last week.
Heard them.
No jokes.
No jokes for Cindy today.
No, because I feel like it's probably borderline inappropriate with the topic of special
could
ed. It could
be.
get me in trouble, so we don't want to joke about it, but there probably is a good one out there somewhere. Maybe I can share one at the beginning of next week's episode.
There we go. Okay.
But I do like this thought. Maybe, Cindy, if you can tell listeners, where would they go to find more information out about special ed? I mean, I know there's not just one spot, but if you were going to say, if you had a parent that said, where can I learn more about developmental delay, or where can I find out more about IEPs, where would you direct them?
Well, if they wanted to talk to someone about their student, contacting the school, first step would be to talk to the teacher, see what's going on. Next step, maybe talk to the school psychologist, find out what they think about things. That's what I think would be the best spot to go.
I like that answer because I thought I would have said internet, Google it.
Right.
We knew you would have. We knew
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. Shout out for Brad. Yeah, he would have said that. But
I think that was good advice.
Yes, looking for those. The
Turn to your school first.
Yeah,
right.
Lots of people that can help you there. So
absolutely.
Cindy, you did a great job. Thank you for being a part of this
She was
this
very
week.
nervous to come on today, and she did great.
She did great. Kylie, you want to start talking about next week? What do we got?
Yeah.
Looking forward to next week.
Next week should be pretty good. We're going back to the good old days.
Where? Are we getting a time machine and going somewhere?
I mean, I think before I was born, it sounds like that's where we're going, right?
So we're going to listen to
the
Whoa
good old
Whoa
days.
again?
Yeah, Whoa Whoa for the cancellations. Back to the good old days, memories from elementary school from Brad and Kylie.
I'm really excited about this because we talked early on this year about you don't remember reading curriculum. You don't remember all that stuff. Don't turn the music down too much. It's fine. It's good.
Okay.
It's all good.
Okay.
They like the music too.
Wrap it up.
We don't remember the curriculum. We remember the field trips and the funny things that happened at school, and that's what we're going to share.
All next week, folks.
Yeah.
Get ready.
Tune in and be ready. That'll be episode 1:9. 1:9.
Hey, a quick shout out to Jason Kuntz
Bearded Dad Bod
and
Designs.
Bearded Dad Bod Designs for making some really awesome interventions in detention shirts.
Yep.
So
Cindy
shout
will be
out
getting
to them.
one soon.
Yep.
All of our special guests will get
Every
one.
special guest will
If
get
anybody
a free
wants
t-shirt.
to purchase one, we can make that happen.
We can. They're pretty good looking.
That's
I wish
right.
you could see them right now. So just a quick shout out for the shirts. Thank
All
you,
right.
Jason.
We've let that music run long enough. What time is it, Kylie?
Class dismissed.
See you next week.